Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya, Josh McCuistion here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. I can't believe it, guys, but we're already almost to the final day of the Brent Venables football camp here for the summer, kind of wrapping everything up. A big visit weekend coming up with the ChampUBBQ, which we will kind of get into a little bit of a preview. I know that we talked about it on the Unofficial 40 podcast already. You can listen to that on all of your podcasting devices, but including right here on YouTube. It's a massive weekend. Almost 25 official visitors possibly. I know a lot of those, as you pointed out on the Unofficial 40 today, a lot of those guys are commitments, which should be more of a comfortable situation.
Yeah, of the 25 that I've been told are possible, about half, we got about 12, 13 are going to be guys that are already committed. So it lessens the load a little bit on, all the – people love to talk about just the staff that they know, but, guys like J.P. Lossman and all these other guys that are having to do a lot of juggling between players. So I think that makes it seem a little out of control almost, but I think it's something they can manage.
Go ahead.
I didn't have anything. Nope,
I thought I heard your voice. I heard you creeping in and talking about something.
This is Josh's show. Let Josh
You're just here for the ride?
I'm just here for the ride.
Thanks for staying around.
Some extra commentary.
Very good. There will be plenty of coverage, though, coming up this weekend on SoonerScoop.com. A lot in the transfer portal for softball, as well as Oklahoma pursues Nigel Kennedy. Maybe you've heard of her, the reigning National Player of the Year. Possibly headed to Norman to play for Patty Gasso, talking about becoming kind of the evil empire, if you will, of the Yankees. But a good deal for you out there, the SoonerScoop.com. 1 year or 1 month, 2 months for $1. You would think as many times as I've said it, I would get that down. But promo code OU1, $1 for 2 months to SoonerScoop.com. A lot to come here over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, the SEC arrival or entrance, making it official, whatever you want to call it, coming up on July 1. A lot of stuff planned in Tulsa as well as Oklahoma City that George and I will be back for. I guess you'll be back for coming back from a vacation, a well-earned vacation at that. So plenty to get into today, though, here on the Recruiting Report. Wrapping up day 4 of Brent Venables football camp. That was on Tuesday. The final day coming up on Thursday, day 5. But it was another really good camp. Probably not from a star-studded cast, if you will. Mm-hmm. Probably not what we had seen through the first couple, but there were some really good players and a couple new offers that went out on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think with maybe the way to look at it is as an overall day, pretty solid. But when you compare the sessions from some earlier days, I don't think it matched up quite as well. But you had some good offensive linemen. You had a big-time quarterback on campus. I mean, that's obviously – if you have a quarterback, you can almost do anything else. Because that'll give you something to talk about. Everybody's excited to see him. And, I thought Tate Reynolds lived up to it. So, yeah, there was plenty. There's plenty for us to go over.
We'll get into Tate Reynolds as well as a couple new offensive line offers that went out from Tuesday morning. But let's start in Tuesday afternoon because for the second consecutive session, it was an Oklahoma commit, Malik Hawkins, the 2025 commit out of Frisco Emerson High School. Obviously, the younger brother of Michael Hawkins, who's a freshman this year. The son of Mike Hawkins, who was a star at Oklahoma at the cornerback position. But I don't know, man. We've talked about him a couple times here on the YouTube show. We talked about him on the Unofficial 40 today. Mm-hmm. He's been straight up impressive.
George said this is my show. This almost feels like the Eddie segment because I feel like you're starting to lead them.
I want to carry that banner. Yeah. He's been from a back-to-back sessions from wrapping up what he did over on Thursday of last week. He's been just technically just the most impressive cornerback that we've seen in some time here camping.
Is it a situation, and Josh, you'll be able to answer this because you've seen these guys, but he just seems, and I haven't seen Cortland Guillory play, but he seems just technically and fundamentally better than other guys. Like, you don't really see that from guys his age.
Yeah, and I keep saying, I hate that I kind of keep coming back to the same point, but he's just, watch him just read that receiver and break on it. Like, there's never anybody that forces him out of his drop. Like, he's always just very comfortable and just reading the receiver. Like, he's just playing a very smart game. Like right there, he gets a little hand in. He knows what he can get away with, and he knows what he can't, and he just plays a smart game. And I think part of that is he's taking a lot of reps, but also, again, like we've talked about over and over again, this is the son of a former NFL cornerback. Like, he's had the advantage of, if you've got a question, you don't have to wait till, the next day's practice or whatever. You can sit there and talk with Dad, and he can give you all the advice you could ever want. And I think it shows Malik. And a big part of Mike and what made him such a great player was his confidence. And Malik, I think, really showed this over the 2 days at camp we got to watch him. He was always just like, he never looked phased or bothered. Even like right here, okay, what's he got to do? He just got to put his head down and he's going to try to break up the ball. Like he knew he was beat, but he knows what to do once he gets beat. I really, again, just moved himself up a lot in my eyes. I was super impressed.
I think it's just one of those things where you see Tristan Haynes and he's got all the physical attributes, but he's just kind of a raw player still in terms of learning how to be a corner. Whereas like Malik Hawkins, like that's some stuff that you just don't normally see from a kid his age. Like he's just fundamentally and technically sound, and he's super physical, which I think you love to see. I said that last time, but it was on display again.
Very impressive. And, you know, it's like I told you leaving camp yesterday. It's hard to imagine he's just now going into his senior year.
Yeah.
He seems like he's almost ready to play this year if he was down in Norman. But obviously you're going to have to wait a little bit to see his arrival. He still has a senior year at Frisco Emerson High School. So I guess we'll just keep it in the family to a certain extent, because another sibling, another younger brother of a current Sooner in Jocelyn Malaska, the younger brother, Evanson Malaska, was camping on Thursday. Our first time to really see him in a camp setting. 2026 offer out of Bethany High School.
Yeah, you know, we saw him briefly last summer, and that was kind of, it was like, oh, he's so young. We didn't focus a lot of energy on him, but this time we were ready for him. We knew he was coming. And the thing I noticed more than anything is how much his body is starting to change. Like, we talked about it on the podcast, but Jocelyn Malaska is a big, long kind of, you know, just arms and legs, while Evanson's about 5'10 and a half, 5'11, and really good with his feet and just a very kind of twitchy, explosive athlete. And this honestly is more than I got to watch of him, because I knew he was there, but I got to watch in some of the tight ends and linebackers and some of that stuff. But again, kind of the same thing we were talking about with Malik. He doesn't tend to panic. Like he's like right there. He just like, okay, I got to find the ball. He's very instinctual in how he plays corner, I guess would be the best way to say it.
That was a hell of a catch by that kid too, by the way.
That's one of those that, like, when you're editing it in, it's like, it was pretty good defense. The guy just made a really good play, and sometimes that's going to happen in the life of a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, but again, like what I always hear, and, you know, Carrie's kind of run this back for us, just watch his feet. Like, his feet are so quick. He responds so easily. The receiver gets to him the inside, but he immediately gets his hands on him. And I don't know if everybody saw it, but I tweeted out a video of Jay Valai working with him, and from our guy Brian Bedford at Recruit Route. And he's one of those kids. He's really smart. He takes coaching really well. And I thought you could see what Valai was working on, and you go watch this video. It's almost exactly that. And he kind of took what he learned and immediately put it to use.
Josh, I know you mentioned it on the unofficial 40, but a little surprised that he's only got the Oklahoma offer right now.
Yeah, you know, I think it's one of those deals, and we talk about this all the time, where if you're an in-state guy and it's Oklahoma and they offer you, I think, and now that his brother's there, it only adds to the scales where you're saying, like, do we even want to put energy into this guy because he's just going to go to Oklahoma? So I think Evanson fights that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there's a, Coach, I'd give you a real look if you want to recruit me. And so I think they have to battle that a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, he's a guy, in a normal circumstance, he'd have a dozen offers.
Yeah, and I understand he's pretty good in the track as well.
Yes. I want to say this fall he ran like 10.6 or 10.7 or something like that. So, I mean, he can really go.
He can scoot a little bit.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. And once again, he's just now going into his junior year. He's one of those guys that I feel like a little bit like Cord Nolan in a way that I feel like we've been hearing about him, obviously because of Jocelyn and going to Utah and now back to Norman. But more to come, I would say, for Evanson Malaska. Two of the new offers that went out on Tuesday morning came with a offensive line group that probably wasn't as star-studded as some of these groups had been, and especially on some of the guys that they were going up against on the defensive side of the ball on the defensive line yesterday morning. But Maxwell Hiller walks away from camping with Oklahoma with an offer, adds it to a bevy of a list.
Yeah, and it's easy to knock him and say, oh, he wasn't really facing anybody on the D-line, and let's just be honest, he really wasn't. There was one guy there, very young Georgia defensive end, that I think is going to be a good player, but there wasn't really anybody to challenge him. But in that situation, we see this all the time, guys, where high school offensive linemen that have a bunch of offers go against lesser opponents, and you just have to kind of gauge. You have to go with what you have, and that's all you can see. watching him move around, you're like, there wasn't any doubt. That kid's getting an offer. He looks outstanding. Young guy, even younger than the guys we've been talking about. He's just a 2027, so he's got a lot of time. I thought, again, one of those guys, we've talked about a lot of them in these camps. There haven't been a lot of guys where you're like, well, he's definitely a guard or he's definitely an interior guy, and this guy's definitely a tackle. He's another one of these guys. It's a little bit of a tweener. I think he grows into a guard because you can tell he's just starting to fill out his frame. He's a big kid. And just looking at his lower body, I'm like, I see a pulling guard and a good athlete doing it. But, yeah, so here you can watch him. Like, there was nobody. I mean, nobody challenged him all day. Guy tried to spin back inside. He had no hope. There was I would say probably as dominant as any offensive lineman. Now, the competition has to be considered, but he dominated the way you wanted him to.
He just moves in a fashion that they could have had really good defensive linemen. I think he still would have held up pretty well.
Sure.
And obviously, when you look at his measurables, 6'4", 295, I think is what we have him on 3. He's probably only going to get bigger and definitely a frame that could carry that weight as well.
And he really, A, he carries it well, but B, unlike so many of these guys, we've seen a bunch of linemen come in and they're listed at 6'7", 6'8", whatever, however big they are. And it's always, they're about 10 pounds lighter, they're about 2 inches shorter. 6'4", 290 sounds about right. He is a really solidly built guy.
Josh, I know it's early, but I'm still going to throw it at you. Penn State probably the team to beat?
I think that's definitely the idea that I think is easiest to make sense of. Now, in that area, we know Ohio State recruits Pennsylvania really well. He feels like that caliber of guy. He'll be in that conversation too. So you have to watch them. But I will say, speaking to him afterward, he loved Oklahoma. He really liked the visit. I thought they hit. He clearly liked Bill Bedenbaugh. Bill's from that area of the world. Like Midwest guys tend to like Bill. Yeah. So and I guess Pennsylvania.
I would imagine that Bill Bedenbaugh's style of coaching, I guess, more hard nosed. I guess uses some language that maybe wouldn't fly in some I don't know, church rooms or whatever. Yes. But it would seem that would match up with kind of the way he's been brought up. Midwest is a lot like Bob. With the Youngstown thing, he connected a lot with some of those Midwest guys.
Absolutely. Like, I don't know how well Bill's going to play in California.
Sure.
But, like Ohio, Pennsylvania, the Steel Belt, I think he's going to be just fine.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
The second offer that went out on Tuesday from the morning session with the offensive lineman, Jake Hildebrand from Chandler, Arizona. He's another big boy, 6'6", 285.
Yeah. And, in his case, if he's 285, he's the lightest looking 285 I've ever seen. Now, he may be because he is a big, long-legged guy. I mean, you can see it. He's not like one of these guys who are like, well, it's going to be 3 years. He's big. He's big in the lower half. Like, it's not that he's a little guy. It's just if he's 285, he carries it extremely well. But he, on the other hand, is a tackle. And you can see him here. I love this drill. You get to see him kind of with their hands, how physical they can be, and how well he slides his feet there. He is a definite tackle to me. I don't know that, at his height, with his length, I don't know that guard doesn't seem like it would fit him. It's not that he couldn't do it in a pinch, but I don't think that's where you want him. I don't think that's his best future. And he, unlike Hiller, he had a few guys that gave him some trouble. But what I loved about him, like you just saw right there, he went and played center. He played some guard. He knows he's a tackle. And this is the young kid I was talking about from Georgia that he takes this rep against. And again, it wasn't always perfect from Jake, but again, another 2027 guy, big, long-levered guy. It's gonna take a little while for him to continue to grow into that frame. But I liked what I saw because he can move his feet. He's got length. There's a lot there that makes sense.
Obviously, Oklahoma liked both of them enough to send them back to their homes with a pair of offers, and I think that we kind of thought that was coming.
Yeah, there was, with Hiller, like I said, there was never any doubt. With Hildebrand, you heard some stuff,
sure.
Like, but it never added up to me. I was like, I thought he had a solid day. I never had a lot of doubt, and then watching him, go. You just kind of thought he took a lot of reps. He was really competitive. And again, another kid that kind of mentioned, hey, I'd like to come back. I don't know when it's going to be. I don't know if he's a guy that'll be there for a game this fall. But another guy, again, Oklahoma they made a good first step beyond just the offer.
Two guys that did not walk out of camp with offers, but we needed to highlight them. A pair of running backs, pair of 2027 running backs. We'll start with Myson Johnson Cook. And when I walked up, you were pointing out a couple of the guys that we were going to look at from the running back group, and you're like, yeah, I can't really see him right now, but just walk over there. You'll find him. And he was very easily found by the Scoop HD cameras.
Yeah, at 6'2 plus, probably 200 pounds, big kind of muscly kid. Look at him. I mean, that you can see him amongst the other running backs. He sticks out like a sore thumb, and he's a guy that I was told went to the Texas A&M camp and ran in the 4.4s. Now, that's a handheld time, I'm sure. Like I don't want to say, oh, this guy's he's going to go to the combine and run 4.4 tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. But he's clearly a big time athlete. What's interesting is there's also some linebacker talk with him. So he worked exclusively at running back yesterday, but again, with that size, that frame,
interesting.
He could do a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
That's a guy that you're like, well, we're going to offer him, and we'll let where it's going to be figure itself out. But this is a guy from Katy High, big time program, obviously in the Houston area. And again, like that was some of the stuff. Like you could hear when he would run through those double pads, it sounded different. Like there was a lot more force behind him moving than some of the other guys who are running plenty fast. They just don't have 200 pounds behind them like he did.
It just now hit me too that he's probably one of those guys. If you talk about like growing up, if he grew up in Katy, he'd probably be one of those guys like, yeah, I looked up to Rodney Anderson.
Yeah. Well, he's from Illinois originally. So, like, I want to say
he's probably heard legends of Rodney Anderson.
Exactly. Katy kind of passes that stuff down. But this is, I'm glad this is up. I thought he caught the ball really well for a big running back. Sometimes those guys don't have that focus. And I'm not saying it's supernatural to him yet, but he didn't look uncomfortable. It didn't look like he was fighting the ball or anything like that. So, again, I liked what I saw of him. I kind of, frankly, was a little surprised he wasn't offered. But I think in time you'll see that happen.
The linebacker thing's interesting with as big as that body is.
Yep.
I mean, he's every bit of 6'2", 200 pounds. Josh, again, I know it's early, but given OU's history at Katy High School, you'd like OU's chances, but looking at his offers, I guess Illinois was one of it. I think maybe his first offer.
I think that's right. And again, this is, and I'm gonna lie if I say I know the exact timeline of both the offer and when he actually moved. But this is a guy that people are just kind of getting familiar with, and in this, or at least in this region of the country. But he's gonna blow up. Katy, like I said, I mean, you don't get to see them throw the ball. I used to joke about that with Rodney all the time and what a good receiver he became. It'll be very interesting to see because with what they do offensively, a big sledgehammer like that, gosh. I mean, he is perfect for what they want to do offensively. So we'll see what plays out. But he's a guy to me that if I'm Oklahoma, even if you're not ready at running back, okay, kind of what you're saying though. We're going to offer you as an athlete, and then we're going to see where we like you as time goes on.
No doubt about it. Go ahead.
I was just going to read out his offer list is already pretty impressive.
It's really good.
Georgia, Oregon, Texas A&M, Penn State, Nebraska, Tennessee. I mean, those are some. I mean, Georgia and Oregon and Texas A&M alone is impressive.
I even think nowadays, I mean, as weird as it sounds, you kind of got to throw SMU into the mix, who's also offered him. I know that the story out that I think they raised like $195 million over the last quarter or year since they announced the move to the ACC. It's insane. Absolutely insane. The polar opposite of Myson Johnson Cook from a physical standpoint was another running back at Oklahoma's camp on Tuesday, 2027 athlete out of Groesbeck, Texas, which I have not heard Groesbeck, Texas producing a guy, but Jordan Smith. Definitely interesting, and when you flip on the tape, you can see why.
Yeah, for those that do know, or I guess, and probably more for those that don't, Groesbeck's in the Waco area. I told about 40 minutes outside of Waco, where you watched Myson Johnson Cook kind of be, big and powerful, and like I said, running through those pads. This kid, it was almost like the pads weren't ready for him when he got there. He was so quick through those drills and the bag drills. It was one of the more impressive things I've seen from a running back at a camp in a few years. And we've watched, I think this, they've, 3 offers have already gone out this. Yeah. And I thought he handled that better than any of the guys I'd seen. What was really even interesting is as good as he looked, he was fighting off illness. At one point, he was getting sick over in one of the trash cans. He'd been fighting off some kind of bug. And DeMarco had apparently just told him, like, we really want you here if you can make it. And so he showed up and really did well. But, again, like, look at this. When they were doing some of these drills with the linebackers, The linebackers were having to read whether they were running little quick screens or whether they were going to go out in routes. So they were sucking up to the line of scrimmage. And, I mean, you're just meat with that kid. Like, there was no way you were going to deal with him in that kind of space.
The most unfair matchup.
Yes.
Anytime they go to
Linebackers,
linebackers, running back
deal.
is, it's a raw deal for sure.
That was like going from watching Ramondre Stevenson to like Roy Finch.
Yes.
Like, that's
Yes.
what that like felt like right there.
I told Josh on the podcast, he reminds me of one of those guys that ended up at Oregon in like the mid 2000s. Is like, where the hell did this kid come from?
Let's see. There was we mentioned Michael James.
Yeah.
I think it was Kenyon Barner was one of them too. Like he was a good
Sure.
back for them. But yeah, the problem was they were going right behind each other in the line, so it made Jordan look extremely small, and it made Myson look really like slow.
No doubt.
And you're like, neither one of those things are fair.
No.
They're just going against kind of top end of the spectrum on the other side.
Two very interesting guys in that 2027 class, though, and even though they didn't walk away with an offer, it's probably still in the cards for both of them, you would think.
Absolutely. Myson, I don't think there's a lot of doubt.
Sure.
Now, with running back and DeMarco, you look at some of like the Taylor Tatums, the Gavin Sawchecks, he has a type. He likes a bigger guy. But if he said, okay, I've got my whoever it's going to be, maybe it's those two together, you know, and you say, okay, this is our thunder and lightning. We just like George is talking about. You've got your Ramondre, you've got your Roy Finch. You can do a lot of damage with those two guys in the same field.
No doubt. The final guy that we're going to highlight from camp on Tuesday was obviously an Oklahoma quarterback offer. In the 2026 class, Tate Reynolds comes in from Arizona, and when he walked into the building, he was hard to miss because he looked so good.
You said from Arizona, possibly Central Casting. Like, I mean, like this guy is what, like when you think of like a TV movie quarterback, that's what he looks like.
Yeah.
And, the bleach blonde hair and the whole thing. And again, it'd be easy to write him off and just be like, oh yeah, he looks like a quarterback. That dude can sling it, man. Like he was really impressive.
It took like two throws, like deep throws that it was like, oh, okay.
Absolutely. Now, and I will say, and Eddie and some others picked up on it. He's a big time baseball guy. He throws it like a baseball player because he's got that little flip, like it's like a wind up. There's no other way to say it. And I think it cost him a little time on his release. That again, that's nitpicky. I'm not trying to run him down because I thought he was really, really good. Got a lot of velocity, throws the ball well. I thought at times you could tell that, like I said on the podcast, he's clearly been doing lots of showcases and all that kind of stuff in baseball. So I'm guessing, like, in baseball, there's never that moment where you're like, I'm going to put some touch on this. Like everything is just you're throwing it on a rope. And so I think at times, like some of the underneath stuff, he really wanted to gas it, and he just didn't need to. But again, I think Oklahoma's in great shape for Jaden O'Neal. If that were to change and Tate Reynolds became you're more than okay with Tate Reynolds being your quarterback in 2026.
And the plan is for him to play both baseball and football when he gets to college?
That's my understanding, yeah. Now,
Interesting.
Again, he's one of those guys where, and I won't say that I know the baseball future of a guy in 2026, but there's enough buzz around him. You're like, well, maybe he's an MLB kind of guy. Like you wonder a little bit.
Right.
He does look like a baseball player.
100%. 100%. I've looked up some of his perfect game videos, and I think that he will acclimate himself well on a college baseball diamond. Probably be the best way to say it. So that kind of wrapped up everything from Tuesday's camp. Obviously, everything's coming up on Thursday with the final session, morning and afternoon session. We'll be out there over at the indoor facility as well as the track field to kind of take everything in. It seems like it's going to be another pretty good group that's expected in on Thursday.
I think it's going to be kind of an in-state flavor from what I've gathered so far. Like I said, I've mentioned Nehemiah Colon. That's got an OSU offer Arizona. He's a 2026 D lineman. We've got the Dillard brothers from Jinx. Formerly of
Lincoln Christian, and now at Jinx, joining the party over at Jinx.
Jinx. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing. But like I said, there's going to be some names that I don't have yet, so I don't want to say, oh, this is all there is. But it will be another solid camp. I would expect it's probably, if you take out Tate Dillard, because it's just so exciting when you have a quarterback that you can really kind of watch and get into. Take that away. I think this will probably be a better session than on Tuesday, but we'll see.
It'll be interesting. It'll be fun to be out there. It's kind of weird that we're already to the middle of June and the end of camp, which usually is kind of a grind. But the way that they've set it up this year, I really do think that like the two different sessions with offensive linemen, defensive linemen in the morning, and then skill position players in the afternoon, it's gone great. I loved how they set it up this
Hey,
year.
People get mad when we come down on OU. I love it. I thought they made a change, and it's really been good. Like,
Can't
I think it's
bitch
worked out
about
well.
anything.
I
Damn it.
got to find something. I'm upset.
I also like how a lot of it's inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yesterday when they just
They
brought
moved
everybody
everything
indoors,
inside.
that was not
Now, there
bad.
wasn't a whole lot of room on the sidelines, but that's neither here nor there. Probably inside baseball that nobody cares about. Big recruiting weekend. After Thursday, another big recruiting weekend. The ChampUBBQ coming up this weekend. And as we said at the top, 25 official visitors. Half of those guys are familiar faces and familiar names.
Yeah, and I do want to be careful. I've said 25. That's kind of
Loosely.
what I've kind of heard
over
is a
20
possibility. Yes, I've got 22 confirmed at this moment, so we know it'll be over 20. And again, with that count right now, like I said, you've got 12 commitments and 10 uncommitted guys.
Which is still, I think, for people out there watching it, that's a wild number to bring in at one time.
Oh, yeah.
For official visits, when it's more official, you can do a lot more with those guys than maybe on an unofficial when you're just taking them for the the tour of the campus or something.
And it's made possible because, again, Oklahoma's changed the way the staff is shaped.
Sure.
It's a lot bigger. There's a lot more support. And that you couldn't entertain that many guys 5, 6, 7 years ago because you've got 10 staffers and 4 GAs and that kind of stuff. You just wouldn't have had the bodies to keep everybody busy.
Let's take a look at the, I guess, just the expected names that could be coming into Norman this weekend. I think a lot of them that follow recruiting, very familiar names. You see some of the names that, currently are in the Oklahoma class, but guys like a Max Granville coming in this weekend, that it would seem that from the outside looking in, this is a big weekend for him or for Oklahoma. And we should note that you made note of on the podcast, this is the final weekend of official visits for everybody.
Yep.
And then you go into a dead period.
That's right. And so that is it. This will, on Sunday, I guess at midnight, it all closes and there's no more on campus, whether it's high school campus, college campus, no contact of that kind. So that will all stop until the end of July or until, I guess, late in July. I want to say the last day. And then so a lot of these guys, the guys that aren't already committed, I would guess almost every guy on this board that you're looking at right now will make their decision between now and that end of the month in July. Now, maybe there's one outstanding that just for something happens or whatever, but guys like Andrew Babalola, Isaiah Gibson, Andrew Marsh, CJ Nixon, Christian Jones, a linebacker out of Nebraska, Amarian Robinson, Emmanuel Choice. I mean, I just keep going down the list there. Christian Evans is a key one, the defensive lineman. We got him noted as a corner. That's not Kerry's fault. I did not. He showed me the board. I missed it the first go around. So, but yeah, there's 10 guys here that Oklahoma's going to know their fate with, but that's what we keep talking about, guys. It's not just about, there's 10. How do the numbers work? Because they can't take all 10 of those if the numbers are what I've been told they are.
Josh, is there anyone on that list? Last week it was Marcus Harris, that committed from the big visit weekend. Anybody on that list that you're like keeping an eye on? I know CJ Nixon is kind of the one that everyone's kind of pegged, but is there anyone else?
Yeah, he's the one I kind of, like you said,
Pause.
Kind of.
He's
the one that I definitely would note. The only other one that I would say, maybe you just keep an eye on might be Christian Evans, the defensive lineman for Virginia, just because I know Oklahoma has made a priority of him. They lost, not lost is strong, but the Cole Breiler kid picked Stanford, and that was a guy they were really locked into for a while. They need a couple bodies on the inside. As good as that defensive line class was, we talk about it every year. You've got to keep stacking those guys, and they do already have Trent Wilson. That's a big win for them. Frankly, I'm a little surprised with Christian Evans being a Virginia guy and Trent Williams being from the DMV himself. I'm a little surprised he didn't come in this weekend and those two could kind of spend time together. But he's one I would keep an eye on. But I mean, honestly, most of these guys, like I said, CJ Nixon, I've got a feeling something's about to happen. But the rest of them, they're going to do this July thing. I mean, we're going to see some July announcements, probably a couple on the 4th of July, because I just can't drunkenly enjoy that as my own leisure. So got to work on that day. But yeah, this is going to be a lot of, at least a couple of these guys will almost certainly be an OU's commitment list in about a month's time.
Perhaps the first name to make his decision coming out of these visit weekends would be Smith Aragbo, who has I believe a July 1 announcement date.
Yep. And what's interesting about that is because, guys, we talked about it yesterday. Tuesday, Oklahoma hosts a camp. They have a 2025 tight end from Tennessee there. So clearly they're still entertaining the idea of maybe having another tight end. Now maybe that's a PWO situation. Maybe they do go along those lines. At the same time, C.J. Nixon's a really talented tight end. Mm-hmm. So if you could say, okay, Smith, we're going to let you play defensive end, and C.J., we're going to leave it open-ended. We're going to maybe we start you at DM, but we're going to say if that doesn't work, if we're not comfortable there, we're going to slide to tight end. And he could do that. I think he's more ready to do that than he is defensive end. So that's just one of those things where I'm saying, maybe that's the best way to get as much quality in your class as you can to kind of, shuffle the deck a little bit.
And that gets into the whole, the conversation we've had. It wouldn't be the first time, but do you take an in-state kid over somebody that maybe is coming from outside of the state? And I think the way that Brent's recruited, it's very obvious that they want to keep the best inside the state.
Absolutely.
I'm really interested to see what they do at receiver because adding Marcus Harris kind of puts them in, I wouldn't say a bind, but
it's a great position to be in, but there are decisions to be made.
You've got Andrew Marsh, who obviously they really like coming in this weekend. Emmanuel Choice coming in this weekend. Cortez Mills came in last weekend, who apparently had a great visit. So it's like, Josh, you think they'll only take one of those three guys?
I don't, based on how they're recruiting, no. Like
Emmett Jones is going to land all of them.
Yeah, like Emmett Jones is just like, I'm taking them all. We'll let it sort itself out. But what I keep being told about the numbers is like 22, 21. And they're like, that's even a reach. Like that. That's 5 commitments away, guys. Sure. They're bringing in 10 guys this week, and they had 7 last week or 8 last weekend. So you're just like, at some point, something's got to give here. It's either the numbers are going to give, or a lot of these guys are just, it's going to be, kind of musical chairs, like who sits down first. So I am not sure how that's going to play out. But if the numbers are what I'm told they are, I can't imagine a way they take more than one more wide receiver. And who that would be, they love Emmanuel Choice.
Sure.
They've been on Andrew Marsh forever. And Cortez Mills is one of the fastest rising receivers in the country. And you watch his tape, that guy he's real. The picture I would tell people to go look, the picture of he and Marcus Harris standing next to each other, just look at Cortez Mills' length. His arms, it's an old coaching cliche that I've always liked. He can scratch his knees without bending over.
Right.
He's that kind of guy, and you're just like, that catch radius is massive.
I think, too, when you talk about numbers, Josh, in this class, I'm sure some of it depends on the offensive line situation because they're in on so many guys. It's like, well, if they just get one of them, then maybe you take another receiver if you can. Or if you get a couple of these offensive tackles, maybe you don't take a 5th wide receiver. I you know what I'm saying? I feel like the offensive line is so much up in the air right now with so many different guys that it's hard to, I guess what number they're going to have.
Yeah, you've got 2 already committed with Owen Hollenbeck, as your center commitment, and then Ryan Foje, a guy that, is finally, I think, starting to get his recognition. People are realizing how good he is, and he'll obviously be on campus this weekend. And if you can just find a way to land one of the guys we've been talking about for over a year now, guys, you get one of those, and if you can close Darius Afalava, who I think they're still in really, really good shape for, he's got his Washington official visit this weekend, and then I think we'll all know the score. But I really like where they're at. You get those 3, Afalava, Hollenbeck, and Foje, and then any of that 4, that's one of the best offensive line classes in the country. It just is. So I think you're in great shape, but you got to close on one of those guys.
Right.
Because, Foje is great, and we all know how much I like him and think of him. It's not every day that you have this many elite offensive tackles, within a 3-hour drive from Norman.
Yeah.
You got to come away with one. You just have to.
And especially with, as much as we've talked about this 2025 class and as much as we've talked about the move to the SEC and knowing the importance of those guys up front, it almost makes it like times 1,000 what this 2025 class could mean to not just Bill Beatabo, but the University of Oklahoma football program.
Yeah. Guys, this is – because if you do that, then you can go get the guy in the portal that maybe buys Ryan Foje a year of development, because then you're still like, we're working towards something. We're going in the right direction. And then, hey, Foje's ready to go. And then you can kind of keep backfilling like we're talking about on the defensive line in this class. You start building that in 2026 and moving forward.
It's kind of crazy. Everybody talks about, the month of June being this, summer, not dead period in the recruiting terms, but just kind of dead, no news.
Yep.
the next couple of weeks are going to be very fascinating to see how not only, this weekend unfolds, but what's to come after that. So with a lot of, we could be looking at a situation where there's a lot of guys starting their senior season and Oklahoma's flat out done.
Yeah. Guys, that's what I was going to say. We're going to go from the last day of Brent Venables' camp to the start of actual camp.
Sure.
Oklahoma could absolutely be done with recruiting, and there could be 10 commitments between here and there.
I guess that just is kind of another indication of how accelerated everything is, because then those kids will be basically on campus within 4 months after that.
Yep.
It's crazy. All right, Jinx.
You owe me a soda.
Can't talk. Son of a bitch. All right. We appreciate everybody for joining us here on the Recruiting Report. We'll be back out at the indoor facility as well as the track field tomorrow for the final day of Brent Venables football camp, and then rolling on into what is going to be a very interesting couple weeks for this 2025 class and maybe more, 2026, 2027, who knows. But we'll probably end up talking about a 29 commit before too long, and that's when I'll know that I'm way too old.
Oh, yeah.
That probably already came, though, so. For Josh, George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page.